Right, so we now have James's presentation, which he's slaved over for minutes.
Lots of minutes,
yeah, for lots of minutes. Know that he's been preparing. And as you know, as I said before, James is from MRC, but actually leads Work Package 7, which is looking at exploitation, business models for catch, and business models generally. You know, how part of the work package is looking at how we can help cities look at some commercialisation routes for carbon management and really the opportunities for cities in the green arena. So part of that, this is actually a dual workshop. We have the interest group, we also have this business design workshop. So James is going to give the first one of the business design workshop presentation.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the business opportunities from carbon management. In this presentation will kind of serve as an introduction to the workshop which we'll do afterwards. So it intends to really raise questions rather than answer them, and then we can potentially talk about them afterwards. So initially I will just present some of the business effects and costs of carbon and climate change. And secondly, start to think about what are the opportunities are there available or are there for catch to be financially sustainable in the long term. What are the potential business and commercial opportunities arise from catch, and these are for people and other businesses or existing businesses. How could they benefit from catch? And just finally, what are the methods and opportunities to manage carbon? This is a new area, and it's something that certainly catch could potentially be involved in. So initially, this is just a quote from the Stern Review, which we'll all have heard about and possibly read. That greenhouse gases are, in economic terms, an externality. Those who produce greenhouse gas do not face the full consequences of the cost of their actions themselves. So essentially, people produce this cost but don't pay for it. And this is an example of market failure, where someone does something that doesn't pay the consequential costs. So coming out of that, internalising the cost of carbon will create an expense for businesses and organisations, and that is potentially a business risk. But on the other hand, there are also opportunities to arise out of a business environment that considers the cost of carbon, and that's what we really want to try and look at and identify and discuss. So from a business, taking from a business sort of point of view, carbon can be considered as being a compliance issue. So essentially, if regulation or laws come in, then they will be subject to these legislation. They'll have to consider them and act accordingly. So this is something that's enforced upon them. Secondly, it's a reputation issue. Their brand and perception to the public and to their customers will be affected by the changes and how they're perceived when they produce carbon, or if they're a carbon-intensive company. So they really have to consider this from a sort of marketing perspective. As a competitive issue, carbon, when you talk about energy and fuels, is a cost. If you can reduce your carbon output through the fuels you use, then you can become more efficient. There's an energy saving aspect to it, which exists for businesses, for households, for public transport organisations, etc. So that's a third sort of area that they can consider. There is, of course, a business risk associated. If you produce carbon-reliant products, or the energy which you use that feeds into your products, for example, a bus operator, if fuel costs rise according with carbon, then that's a risk. It's a potential expense that they might have to deal with, including their balance sheet. But finally, the real area we want to think about is carbon as an opportunity, and where can businesses capitalise on carbon and utilise this opportunity. It's just a reference by Dr. Craig McKenzie, University of Edinburgh. He came up with these areas. So carbon's two sides of the same coin. Note a nice euro there. Carbon is a business opportunity. New products, you can develop new products which are low carbon technology, carbon efficient. These are all potential opportunities that could come out of carbon. Obviously a positive image that is associated, and you see a lot now of organisations, specifically oil and gas firms, who are now called energy companies. They've decided that there's a positive image associated with being green, and they're trying to promote themselves as being so, and they invest a lot of money in advertising and marketing to try and promote this mind shift from being oil and gas to being about energy. There's a lot of alternative technologies coming out of the carbon area, where it's an opportunity for people to take on these new technologies, become a market leader using these technologies, and sort of differentiate themselves from other companies on the basis that they're using low carbon technology. And going down this line will promote innovation, new thinking, new processes, and possibly thinking in new ways, and that can lead to innovation within the company, not just with carbon, but in all aspects of the company. But on the other side of the coin, carbon can be considered as a business risk. You may have product redundancy, where products which you use, or your core products, may be carbon reliant, and if legislation comes in, for example, when we talk about legal constraints, then that may all of a sudden just make your product redundant and unusable, and that is a real business risk. There's obviously a negative image associated with being carbon intensive, and it's the flip side of why oil companies have moved to become energy. They have perceived it as a negative image, and they want to steer clear of that. Carbon is an expense. This is if carbon becomes a business expense or a cost that would have to be included in a balance sheet, for example, then that is a potential risk. And the cost of change, if you have to change manufacturing processes, supply chains, all these aspects to become more carbon or less carbon intensive, then there is a massive cost throughout the life cycle of the product you produce. So these, just to show there's two sides of the carbon debate. This is a quote.